couple years ago, when we started Warriors Against Pediatric Cancer, we put it out to students to come up with service projects where they could raise money for Warriors Against Pediatric Cancer, because you're going to have dress down day tomorrow, but you're going to give money for that, and that's great. But we want you guys to really get involved and to come up with a service project or some way that you can serve to raise money, because it's really about you guys helping out like that. We really want you to do that. Well, Zach is our only student that has put a service project together 2 years ago and made that happen. And he had wristbands made, and what names were on that? Ethan, Aiden, and Grayson were on the wristband, and he sold them and then gave the money back to Warriors Against Pediatric Cancer. And that was a great idea, and it worked out good. The wristbands were awesome. And so you need to think about that. Instead of just showing up here every day and getting your dress down days, that's all great, but let's find ways to serve, right? Think about how you can serve. Warriors Against Pediatric Cancer is a great cause, and you can be a part of it, and you can help lead the way of raising money for that. So think about that, especially you middle schoolers, but even the little guys can get involved too. Okay, thanks, Zach. And we have Coach doing chapel for us, but let's start with the pledge.
All right, good morning. I'm going to try to read so I don't get scattered today. Today we're going to speak about Epiphany, which is the season after Christmas in the church year. Started Sunday, and Epiphany has, the definition of Epiphany has a couple different meanings. It could mean the sudden flash of understanding or insight is what we talk about every day, when you just suddenly understand something, realize it. In the church, it means when we realized after Christ was born in the manger that the Magi realized that he was Christ. He was the Savior that came to save us. They realized it. So we're going to talk about that today. So the Magi were coming to Bethlehem, and they were trying to find this baby born in a manger. Now, who did they stop to try to find out where he was? Does anybody know? Caleb? King Herod. Now, King Herod, was he a good guy? No. So they stopped. And the Magi, that's where we get the word magic from. They were wise men. They were astronomers. We think they studied the stars. They were very wealthy because of the gifts they brought. They brought gold and frankincense and myrrh that we know about. And so to go see this little baby in a manger that was born in a stable somewhere with no pillow, cold, and whatever, they must have been missing something. They traveled all this way to see the baby. They must have had a void in their life if they were looking for something. They were following the star. They studied the stars. So if they had everything that they could ever have, all the money they wanted, wisdom, they were probably the smartest people around. They were the scientists of then. They still were missing something, so they went to find this little baby. And they found the baby. When they talked to King Herod said yes. He said, yeah, I've heard about this baby. He said, I'm not quite sure where it is. And when you find out where he is, will you come back and tell me so I can go give my love to the baby too? In essence, that's what he said. But what did he mean? Did he mean that? Was he going to give his love to the baby? What do you think he was going to do? Opal. He's going to kill it because King Herod was in charge. He was the king, right? And he heard he had money coming in and he had power coming in, and he didn't want anything to disrupt that. He didn't want anything to mess that up. So he was going to kill that baby. And he had a lot of other babies killed too, just to make sure, just to try and see if he was killed. All right. Now, the Magi were very moved from this experience from the baby Jesus. And I love, when Christmas time comes on, I love it. I love the music. I just love the feeling. I get a certain feeling during Christmas. Ever since I was a kid, I like the lights. I like the church services. I just get a warm feeling. And one good thing about Epiphany, besides realizing that Christ is King and this little baby was Christ, is we still get to sing some Christmas carols. I love Christmas carols. How many of you like Christmas carols? I know Miss Whitaker's going to raise her hand. I've heard jingle bells coming out of her room in August, so she prepares all year. So right now, I'm going to play the guitar, and we're all going to sing the first three verses of We Three Kings. And I know you know it from the Christmas program, which y'all did a great job. But we're going to sing it probably a little bit slower than y'all did. Try to stay with me. Now, Yates, teach your favorite part when we were practicing. What is your favorite part? Because it's a little bit different than what you did in the program. Can you sing? Sing it for me one time. Go ahead. That's it. I practiced with those guys for a few weeks before the program, and I got to hear Yates every time singing just like that. It was beautiful. Thank you, Yates. One great thing, we're only singing 3 verses, but one great thing about this Christmas carol is it runs the whole course. It talks about the little baby being born, the wise men coming, the Magi. Then it talks about the sacrifice and dying. So it's a great, great song. That sounded good, guys. Yates, I could hear you, man. All right. So we talked about the Magi and finding this beautiful baby, this humble baby in the manger. But we also talked about another type of epiphany, and it's when a sudden flash of understanding. Now, the wise men had an epiphany with one of the humble baby, but an awesome, our King, our Christ. Can we have an epiphany through meeting other people? Maybe that aren't like us, different from us, how we treat people. Some people we talk about might have a stigma. I don't know. I was thinking about it the other night, and how can we be moved by different people? We need to approach new people with an open heart and an open mind, because we may have a stigma about people. In this country, a lot of times through the news and politics, we have a stigma about maybe immigrants, right? People coming in this country. And let me tell you something. You know, there's a lot of political stuff going on, and I'm not getting into that. And we believe, and I think it's true, if you want to come into this country, you should do it the proper way. However, your parents all love you very much. And a lot of you heard me say this before. Your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncle, whoever, you wouldn't be sitting in these pews right now at this school if they didn't love you. Right? So if you lived in a different country and you had a dirt floor and you didn't have anything and you had a lot of violence around you, would you risk your life to get to another country? You think your parents, if we lived in America and it was awful, we had no money, we had nothing, and Canada was a land of milk and honey where they had everything and you had a lot of opportunity, do you think your parents would try everything they had to do to get you to Canada? Yes, they would. They would try to do the best thing for you. So we think about a lot of these immigrants going on and we judge them. However, these people that we meet, if you move around the world, if you meet people of different races from different areas of the world, you realize after you get to know them and after you speak with them, they're the same as you are. There's some bad people out there. There's a lot of bad people in America, and there's a lot of bad people in other countries. But most of the people in other parts of the world love their children just like your parents and grandparents do. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know if my mother came today. I'm 51. She's still coming to see me do stuff. So thank you. I guess it was she probably knows the year. I'm thinking 1975, where I grew up going to Mount Olive. We sponsored the first Vietnamese refugees that came into this area. And I remember on the news, I can remember it, they were called boat people because they had nothing. They were forced out of their country. There was violence. They had no food, political troubles. And could you imagine if you lived in Hickory, or even if you lived down near Wilmington or Myrtle Beach or whatever, and things were so bad that you got on a boat and you didn't know where you were going, but you knew you wanted to get away. Well, those were these people coming into this country. And I remember people joking about them, boat people coming. Well, they moved, Mount Olive Lutheran sponsored, bought the house. The house, and there was a stigma about them because there was a preformed judgment. These people weren't going to do anything coming into this country. So the house they moved in, does everybody know where Planet Fitness is in Viewmont? Planet Fitness, McDonald's in Viewmont right there across the road, Windy City Grill. Planet Fitness, there's a big shopping center right there right now. Some of you probably know where Hops and Grapes is. So you moved right there. That was all woods when I was a kid. And there was a little brown house back there. It was probably about 600 square feet, this house. I know it didn't have air conditioning, didn't have anything else, but it was back kind of in the woods. There was a long driveway that came up from where that car wash was and went back into those woods. And my best friend lived right in front of it. And before they moved there, there was an old man, old Mr. Horn lived there. And we thought he was creepy because because every time we saw him, he had his pajamas on. He was standing out there. He was probably 80 or 90 years old, and we kind of laughed about him, made fun of him, until we met him one day. And he talked to us, and he was a great guy. So we had a stigma going on about him because we didn't know about him until we talked to him. So this Vietnamese family moved into this house. And so that's where I hung out when I was a kid, in that neighborhood. So we were back there all the time. We got to know them. And it was An and Tao. I don't remember all their names, but my mother probably doesn't know about this, but I used to go back there. And I like to eat. And I remember, I have no idea what it was. She probably told me, but I didn't understand it. But I remember sitting at the table, at their supper table. They had a little tiny table in there. And she had a bowl of food. And it was mixed up, and it wasn't like anything I'd ever seen before. And she had a spoon, and she would take a bite, and she'd dip it in the thing, and she'd give her daughter a bite, who was about 2 years younger than me probably, and she'd dip it in, and she'd give me a bite. And she would keep feeding us. And I went back there for the food. And I got to know them, and I got to like them. They were great people. But before, when you heard some people talking about them when they moved into this country, they were boat people. They were laughing about it. It's kind of the same situation that's going on now. But if you get to know people, you get to know them, and you realize you have to open your heart and get to understand and know people that are different from you. All right. Now, you can have another kind of epiphany. Let me tell you an epiphany I had about a month and a half ago or 5 weeks ago, and it's not a great epiphany. It's like it was a great epiphany for me, but not for Emma Monahan. Okay? We were in class and playing soccer, and Emma fell down, and she broke her arm. And let me tell you something, it wasn't pretty, was it, Emma? But I got the privilege to sit with Miss Abernathy and Emma and hold Emma's hand and pray with her when she got through this until the paramedics came. And it was a terrible day for Emma. She was very strong. She had a combination of being very strong and in shock. Because she was just kind of laying there, and I was holding her hand, and Miss Abernathy was rubbing her hair, and we were talking to her. And on my way home that day, it just came over me. I said, you know, if I was still a salesman or something else out in the business world, I would have never had that experience. That was a touching experience for me. It was not a great experience for him, but it meant a lot to me. It really touched me. That's another kind of epiphany that just can come over. Other kind of epiphanies, when you think of things and you can change your life. Maybe you need to make a change in your life. I know I need to make a lot of changes in mine. One of the quickest epiphanies, greatest epiphanies about a life change I've ever seen, when I went to boarding school in Pennsylvania, one of my best friends, and I live all the way across the country from him, and he's a little crazy, but I love him, is my cousin, Pete the Heat. That's what we called him, Pete the Heat. And we had a music room at this boarding school, and we each had a drum set in there. And we would go after we did our study hall or whatever at night, we'd both go play the drums together and hang out. And Pete was a year behind me in school, and he lived in Pennsylvania, so I never knew him growing up. I saw him, once a year maybe. And we were sitting there after we played the drums, we were just sitting there talking on the floor. And he had a little extra weight on him like I do, but he was in 10th or 11th grade, I don't remember. And he wasn't making good grades. And he looked at me, he said, Hitch, that's what he called me, that's what everybody called me. He said, starting tomorrow, I'm making straight A's, and I'm gonna lose 15 pounds. I said, whatever. We've heard it all before. Like Mark Twain said, quitting's easy. I've quit thousands of times. But you have to stick with it. But Pete did. He woke up, he got his mind right. He woke up, something snapped in him. He started running every day. He got on the cross-country team, the track team, started making straight A's, made A on a roll all the time, which I never did. Got in good shape and turned his life around. Now he lives in San Francisco, plays drums in a jazz band, hangs out. I never get to see him. Talk to him online sometimes. All right. Hispanic Bridge. When I did the Hispanic Bridge, I didn't know those people, but I did it through this church, through Pastor Martin, down at St. Stephen's Elementary. I didn't know those people, but I said, I'll go volunteer. And I went down and I had a conversation partner, and I would sit and speak with him. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I would sit and speak with him, try to teach him English. Let me tell you something. They were awesome. They were so awesome that right after I did that, I went and got my English second language certificate certified. So if I ever need to, I could work with people with learning a new language. I especially loved it when the women would bring in those homemade tamales. Let me tell you something, it was great. But they were just nice people. All right. We can have epiphanies of all types. Let me see, who knows in the Bible, I'm not even going to give you another clue. Who had a great epiphany in the Bible? Somebody raise your hand. Somebody tell me. Thad, do you know? Good try, buddy. Anybody else? Andy Klein.
Paul.
Exactly. What kind of person was he before he changed his name and had an epiphany? Hudson Brown. He persecuted Christians, killed them. Now, he had a little help with his epiphany, right? Because if you were persecuting people and not treating people the way they should have been treated and not really see the light, but God, what God do to it? Bradley. Blinded him. And then what happened to him? He became a devout Christian and did great things. Turned his life around. We can do that without being blinded by God as a warning. We're smart enough and we hear the word all the time that we can pick that up on our own, right? Now, let's see what kind of time I got. Okay. I love music, so I was looking up musicians who became Christians because I know some of their lifestyles, these rock and roll guys, they don't have great lifestyles. A lot of them don't. You can't stereotype them all, but a lot of them don't. And probably the best songwriter of our generation for lyric is Bob Dylan, and I'd argue that with anybody and show you about 500 songs and say, look. He became a Christian and went out in one of his tours back in the 70s, he started playing Christian music he wrote. And he got booed, but he did it for a while, and he's still a Christian. Brian Welch, I had the video pulled up yesterday. He was a guitarist, singer for Korn, the band Korn, who was a heavy metal band. They're kind of progressive, heavy metal, alternative mix. He was addicted to all kinds of substances, had a baby, her mother died of substances, and he was just saying, please, God, help me. In middle school, we're going to watch the video. I showed it to Mr. Childs yesterday, and he said, you can't show that in chapel. But middle school is going to watch it, and he had a great transformation of his life because of what he did, what he went through. And now, he's writing gospel music, he's taking care of his baby. What spurred it on is he loved his child from when she was born, but he was addicted to substances. And they would always play music together because he's a great musician. He wanted his daughter to play music. And she was singing a Korn song in their living room one day, and it was not appropriate. And he said, wait a minute. This can't happen. So he knew he had to change, and he changed his life. Lou Graham. Who knows who Lou Graham is? All right, Lou Graham. If you don't, you won't get this joke, and it's not really a funny joke, but if you know who Lou Graham is, he got a benign brain tumor. So he got kind of what I call, and I've talked about it before, foxhole religion, where something happens to you and then you say, please God, please anything, just help me. And the guy that wrote How Great Thou Art, that's what happened to him. He was a terrible person. We've talked about that before. Lou Graham got a benign brain tumor. Do you know how he knew he had a brain tumor? He knew something was wrong. What happened to him physically? Do you have a guess, Mrs. Butler? Mr. Childs?
Maybe he could sing before?
No. Mrs. Coffey? He literally got double vision. That's one of his songs, Double Vision. So he got double vision, and he went to the hospital and had a brain tumor. So it's not funny how things work out, but, and one of the musicians that impressed me the most was a so-called prophet in another religion. He was the most famous Rastafarian that ever lived. And he was a prophet in this religion. And it's a different religion. They worship a living man. They worship a God called Jah. And he spread that. That's what he talked about at his concerts. That's what he talked about everywhere. He was an incredible musician. He died of cancer also. Who am I talking about, Miss Coffey? Bob Marley. You've heard it because I play it in the gym sometimes. A great musician. But he was a prophet. They held him up. He's the most famous Rastafarian that ever lived. And he became a Christian. He found Christ, and he wrote Christian songs, and he started touring. In the last few tours he did, he played Christian music. Had a reggae beat, but he was a Christian. So I thought that was incredible. Now maybe we can help somebody with an epiphany. Maybe you can find somebody that needs help. When you meet somebody, when you find somebody that doesn't look like you, open up your heart, open up your mind, and meet them. Because the Magi had everything they ever wanted, but they were still missing something. And they went and found this little baby that was a little baby born in a manger. God put him there. He could have been born in anywhere, on top of a mountain in the biggest palace that ever was. But he wasn't. He was born in a manger. We had a gift this year that doesn't look like us. Vicar Eric, stand up for us. Now, does he look like me? He's shorter than I am. And he has less hair than I do, right? Now, if we saw him, and he did a sermon about it, so I don't mind talking about it. If we saw him on the street, if we saw him walking in, one day we'd go up, who's this guy coming in here? Because we don't see past his physical appearance. That's what we need to learn to do. And he's already preached about that, and it was awesome. But has he been a blessing to us this year? Yes. Thank you. When you see him walking down the hall, and he's holding hands with the kindergartners and preschoolers, or you look out on the playground, and there's 20 kindergartners or whoever sitting up on top of the monkey bars, and he's in the middle of them, he's doing God's work. Doesn't matter what he looks like. He's a handsome gentleman. I'm not ragging on him about that. But he may look a little bit different than we do, which is fine. So you remember that when you meet somebody new. When you meet somebody of a different race from somewhere else, remember, they're the same as you are. They love people. They need to be loved. So you need to give that to them. All right. We're going to sing, see what we got here. One more song. And I was looking up Epiphany songs, and this is an Epiphany song. So we're going to sing This Little Light of Mine. So, what did you say? Pink June said, oh, no. Pink June, you're killing me today. I don't have the lyrics written down. I'm just going to yell them out. I don't know if I'll yell out the right ones, but just try to stay with it. All right, we have to sing loud. shine till